Welcome to Umber Talks, a real estate podcast. We're here to learn, share, and explore ideas with the best in the industry. Enjoy. Hello, all. Today is an exciting day because we're having back on the Umber Talks podcast for a second time, Barry J. Hobin. Now, if you're in the real estate industry here in Ottawa, you have most certainly heard his name. He's the founding partner of Hobin Architecture, a firm behind some of Ottawa's most recognized homes, condominiums, civic spaces, and mixed communities. Very exciting to have him back on. Episode number 2. And we are the Umber Talks podcast. So we're powered by Umber Realty, an independent real estate brokerage out of Ottawa and Toronto. So we work across many facets of real estate. We sell luxury homes, urban condominiums, commercial investment properties. And through this podcast, we bring together leading academics, seasoned practitioners, bold entrepreneurs, and these guests come on to the Umber Talks podcast and share their ideas that drive innovation and ultimately shape the future of the real estate industry. So why did we do this episode with Mr. Hobin? Well, the first appearance we had him and I had a fascinating conversation, and it was incredibly well received from our listeners. So we thought, hey, why not have him back on? And Ottawa is entering this really important period of urban transformation. And we wanted to sit down once again with one of the key individuals shaping the city of Ottawa. So Barry gives his insights into different Ottawa neighborhoods. We talk about New Edinburgh, Westboro, Glebe, Little Italy, and a few more. But what was fun is we filmed this episode in Greystone Village. So this is a community in Old Ottawa East, sort of wedged between Main Street and the Rideau River. And Hobin Architecture was the firm hired to master plan this community. So we were right there in Greystone Village filming the episode. And Greystone Village has emerged as this real world example of how the thoughtful architecture, walkability, public space, housing diversity, all of these things can come together to create this highly livable urban environment. So we're constantly referencing, just pointing right out the window and referencing some of Hobin Architecture's designs and structures. It's an amazing episode in that regard. So, and Greystone Village was a huge success and is still going on. To this day, day of release of this episode, you could still purchase brand new townhomes and condominiums. So it's still a growing community. Very exciting. So in this episode, we ultimately zero in on how to build communities that people genuinely want to live in. And we also drive into Barry Hobin's philosophy on just architecture in general, which is sort of my favorite topic to discuss with Barry. And then the conversation takes many turns and we discuss many different topics in neighborhoods in Ottawa. So I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. So we're sitting here in Greystone Village. You can see through the cameras, we have construction going on. We're in the Spencer right now. This was a community that you designed.
Right.
And I want to just go back to the history of this community. So what was it previous to this whole development, and what was the vision for its growth?
So the original lands were occupied by the Oblate Fathers, and they've been here for a long time. The main building that they had been renovated 3 or 4 times, but it was a big, expansive piece of real estate. St. Paul's was taken off part of it, and there was lots of land around it. So when they decided to sell, I think they had a competition of up to 4 different groups that pursued this to develop it. There were planning challenges. There are lots of opportunities. When I say planning challenges, Yeah, to enable all of this diversity to occur, you had to go through a very comprehensive planning process. Um, and there were some environmental things that we weren't fully aware, because the Oblate Fathers had allowed garbage to be deposited on the site from other construction sites, like the Rideau Center. So I think the most significant part was the planning process. And we determined quite early on that we would actually create an aspirational booklet about what we wanted to accomplish on this site. And there's a whole bunch of initiatives, like there's a respect for the river edge. There's a kind of rebuilding of Main Street itself to develop the mixed use, because it's kind of a food desert and lacks animation. Main Street lacks animation. There's the notion of what are we going to build? And so there on the actual site, there's a range of typologies. And I would say we had the opportunity to design an inner city older neighborhood the way it could have been done 100 years ago, but didn't have that diversity built into it. So their surrounding neighborhoods are singles, maybe the odd semi, very little range. So what we put together here is a combination of singles, large singles, small singles, townhouses, large and small, condominiums, low rise, and well, the maximum is 9 stories, and purpose-built rental buildings. And we assembled those in a way that had some cogent themes to it. One of the big themes was the river's an asset, Main Street's a reality. How do we actually create pathways and desire lines that get you from one to the other? And how are the streets organized so that you had the benefit of access to the river? And so I think when you're here and you're walking around, you'll notice right away that there's a vista that leads you right to the Rideau River, or a vista
walking
that takes
straight
you
down this street right here.
takes you to the park, or a pattern that takes you up the Grand Allée, the original heritage tree-lined boulevard that took you from Main Street to the Oblate Fathers. And so all of those things, it wasn't just about buildings, it's about housing typologies, but it's also trying to figure out a landscape pedestrian plan that makes this a neighborhood where people want to walk through, as well as it can accommodate the car.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the big things that you'll see looking down the street, you don't see a sea of garages. You actually have a strong pedestrian environment, and the garages are hidden in behind. And that allowed the streets to be more vibrant and more accessible. And then I guess a big thing of that is if you walk around, that the landscaping isn't just grass. There's a richness of landscaping. There's also almost a maintenance-free attitude to the landscape, and it's usually about perennial gardens and things like that, which actually make the whole green space more real. So, I mean, we are finishing the last 2 phases with the houses around the forecourt, the circular park that's going to be in front of the original Oblate Fathers building. And we are also working on the school that's going to be going in the Oblate Fathers. So you're going to have everything here. So it in many ways, it's responding to an increased need for diversity in older neighborhoods. So if you liked your neighborhood in Old Ottawa South, you could transition into a smaller house like a townhouse. You could transition into a condo. You could transition into a rental. Lots of options. So it's a balance of all of those things and the orchestration of it that makes it work. Obviously, phasing is really important, since it's a big site, so it allowed us to do a phase 1, finish it, and then move on to do the buildings on Main Street. So the phasing of how those things come together, it's always annoying. Just construction's annoying. Like, it's just a reality. But the way it's been set up, it actually works pretty well, and construction tends to be contained.
Yeah, it's not too bad. No, thank you for that overview. It's really interesting to hear it from your perspective, the designer. I love the neighborhood so much that, I mean, I've been selling real estate in Ottawa for 15 years, and I put my parents in Greystone Village.
Right.
So they live in the River Terraces, and they absolutely love it. And they walk around, and you've got the Rideau River, and they'll walk up the Tartlet. And I've noticed that, and I'm curious about, when you were building this community, did the changes along Main Street, pretty significant retail changes coming down the pipe. Was this in the back of your mind? Was the new zoning, mixed use development in the back of your mind, or did that just happen naturally?
Well, actually, to tell you the truth, many of the things that are happening from a zoning perspective at the citywide macro thing are actually telegraphing what we did here at Greystone. So we had to get this piece rezoned based upon principles. So the principles that you're seeing here are trying to be applied elsewhere across the city. Gentle density, other forms, not just all single family homes, so that you can have an apartment building feeling good against a townhouse building, feeling good against a single. And that's really what the planning is trying to do across the city, is trying to increase the density. So what you have is a denser neighborhood than would typically be found in the 1950s suburbs, right? Or like actually going back 100 years.
Now, are there any other plots of land available in communities like Westboro, Glebe, New Edinburgh to do something like this?
Really hard, but I think the ones that you want to watch very closely are the demolition or removal of the government campuses, Tunney's Pasture, Confederation Heights, even around Booth Street. There's lots of potential in every one of those things, large amounts of land with sparsely occupied by government buildings, right? There's lots of room for intensification. There's lots of room for this kind of thinking. And in addition to that, think about the Civic Hospital, which is now transitioning to a major new facility.
Mm-hmm.
What is that large parcel of land? What becomes of that? And I'm picking on locations of land where they're adjacent to great neighborhoods. So I'm not thinking about how do I transition then piece of industrial land. I'm actually thinking about how it fulfills a mandate within a context. And so, the odd time a school site will come up that has enough space, but, there's 16 or 17 acres, I guess, of land in here. And I think the ones that you really want to watch are there's lands around the General Hospital. There's lands along, not industrial, along Riverside Drive. There's lands at Confederation Heights. Confederation Heights is Baseline and Bronson Avenue. That major piece of land that, its uses are changed substantially as a result of government. There's too much land relative to their position, so they're being rethought. And when you rethink, you're kind of like, what kind of neighborhood you're going to create? Are you going to create a neighborhood of high rises? Because a high rises only suits a couple of specific demographics. It doesn't suit a range of demographics. And I think one of the challenges is how do we create the mid-low rise so that it encourages family life in a denser situation, as opposed to thinking families are going to be raised in high-rise buildings.
Right.
That's just, not going to happen. So quickly we'll achieve our high-rise density, but in a very short order.
Because you don't need huge parcels of land to do it.
No, yeah.
So how would a community like Greystone Village compare to other desirable communities, say Westboro, New Edinburgh, Glebe? What are the differences?
I'd say it's really hard to compare. You might say the Glebe, but the Glebe is a combination of and it's changing a little bit, but it's a combination of singles, semis, rows, and some older apartment stock to find new opportunities to build in the diversity of rental. So we can look back to the Ottawa Board of Education building we did at First Avenue and Second Avenue, where we took the old building and converted that and added condominiums. They're all 4 stories.
Is this to 211 Second?
Yeah, 211 Second, 268 First Avenue. And then you can.
Those are larger units, right?
They were.
Yeah. Those almost never come up for sale.
No, because people were happy to live in an apartment in a scaled right environment. It has all the convenience of Bank Street, has the convenience of going to Lansdowne. It's got all that stuff.
And has the square footage.
And plus you've got units that you want to live in.
Yeah.
A new rental project might be the Minto project at Fifth Avenue Court, for instance. but there's not many opportunities to provide that level of intensification and introduce those types of typologies. So when I say Greystone is different from that, we baked that all in from the very beginning. We're going to have these uses. It's harder and harder to do that unless you've got vacant land. Now, Westboro, I grew up in Westboro. There have been big pieces of lands that have come up. The Sisters of Jeanne d'Arc land on Edison and Melbourne was lands that were redeveloped by Uniform. Good example where a large piece of land gets transitioned into something. There's the old industrial pieces like the Fendor site at Roosevelt, which Uniform's going to rebuild into a mid-rise, well, it's actually low high-rise next to transit. And of course, you all along the transitway, you can see guys throwing up towers. Yeah. But that's a very different experience than a neighborhood response where you get to see a variety of things. Of course, the most interesting thing that we've been working on forever is the Breton Flats and what happens there, because it's a large piece of land. It's on transit station. It has the ability to respond to the transit station by density. But if you want people to live there, maybe it's not going to be all high rise. And we're working on 4 parcels of land with a private sector client who's got a long-term lease with the NCC. And so parts of that is mid-rise, low-rise, so that it's more scaled to family life and has a lot of the features that you see here.
Now, I'm getting flashbacks here. 15 years ago, I remember you gave a talk on what Little Italy is going to look like,
right.
Carling and Preston. And
right.
At that time, you might have had a small mid-rise on 330, I think Loretta, and
right.
a couple others. And I remember you saying, and you had some slides behind you saying, this is going to be a condoville here. This is going to be substantial.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, like, look at that. And then took years to go through. And then now you see the big cluster of condos around transit. How can we envision the Breton Flats in 15 years from today?
Well, of course, I'm quite prejudicial to the plan that we had with Trinity and Melnick, but a lot of the principles are there. They're rediscovering the original urban grid, which existed as streets before they demolish everything. So there's a grid work of streets there.
When would that have been produced?
Those streets would have been existed from the early 1900s.
Wow.
So, I know in our planning, we just went back, found the original street grids and used that as our planning. We just rediscovered what was original. The NCC has got a new official plan for it, which sets everything out, including an attitude to how the building should feel along Wellington Street. That is facing the Blues Fest Park and the War Museum.
Could you ever see towns or singles in there?
There's going to be not singles, but there will be low-rise town stuff. Yeah. The other big significant thing for Le Breton is there actually is a water aqueduct that meanders through this. Not the width of the canal,
right?
But there's a water aqueduct that eventually, when you get to the pump house and then opens up into the kayak training facility, you can see that there's actually a beautiful piece of urban landscape in there. Most people don't know, not even aware that there's water
right in behind Lett Street.
Yeah, most people aren't aware that there's water on Le Breton Flats. So Le Breton's got the trick with Le Breton is the time it's going to take to actually make it come into existence. And I think if you can create the diversity of house types, you'll attract different parts of a population, and as opposed to having a monoculture of just one age group,
right,
being there. So the one age group actually speaks to what are my options in terms, what are my housing options, and how. And it wants to be, and I don't know if the senators ever make their way downtown or not. But
what's the update? Where are we at with that? Are the senators going downtown? Like ChatGPT tells me 95%, but I can't tell you 100% yet. A deal's getting signed. Can you reveal anything here today?
I can't reveal anything. I just know that they're acquiring us. The senators are acquiring 10 acres. That I understand. And the challenges to them coming downtown, I think, are largely financial. And it's within a environment where no one wants to see public funds go to fund private facilities. So
It'd be quite the stimulus package, though, would it not?
maybe I think, public funds for private facilities could lead you to a bunch of interpretations. Like, it could mean public funds to public facilities. You change the narrative a little bit that accommodate a private activity.
Do you want to see the Sens go to the Breton Flats?
Personally, I think there will be some challenges. So, like the integration of the transit system there. I mean, now I'm being hugely political, not answering a question. I think the theory is that we would attract a more diverse population because it's more central, is laudable. I think having it downtown, it serves this population that doesn't have a car. I think season ticket holders likely do have cars or drivers and or whatever. So there's that balance of how do you accommodate someone who wants to drive to the game as opposed to take transit. Because I'm pretty sure most of those executive boxes are not going to be served by people coming by public transit. I think.
Well, you still have all the, concerts and events and all.
Lots of stuff going on.
Yeah.
I think, there's lots going on with respect to concert stuff and thing in Ottawa. I think the Live Nation coming to the market is one thing. I think the existing TD Center and the new event facility they're going to create at Lansdowne, it's going to have 7,000 to 10,000 people as an event space. That's going to be super interesting. Anytime you actually create a new beachhead, that's what Le Breton Flats would be. But if you want to look at what's happening in Ottawa, just look at subtly what's happening to Zibi over time. We did the first buildings on the canal, renovated a building, they've added another building. Now you're starting to see a little bit of pattern to it. There's lots of room for development on the Quebec side. You can see it incrementally.
You designed those buildings?
We designed the townhouses canal and the renovation to the, and we did some master planning work as well.
Because I believe it's 320 Mawate has some really nice units that are right on the water. Beautiful.
Yeah. The towns that we did are like your backyard is a terrace right at a canal, right?
Amazing.
So, I mean, those things, that's just to say that it will take time for those things to happen.
How much time are we talking till the Breton Flats, Zibi kind of integrates libraries in full motion?
It's like 10, 15 years.
10, 15.
I mean, I think 10, 15 years will, if it's going to happen, once you start that process, there's things that we can do that, people build on one thing on another and get it more interesting. It's going to be a different kind of neighborhood than this neighborhood. This neighborhood is very much related to family life and schools are here, green space is here. You got established Main Street. So you know what you're building into. Same thing in Westboro. You know what you're building, Westboro Station. You're building into established retail, commercial on the street. If there's enough amenities close by. What will be the trick is the combination of where people living and what services are there, which will be important for Le Breton Flats. I mean, there's, so it's as you mentioned, large parcels of land where things can happen like this. Probably the most intensive piece of land project we're working on right now is what we call Greystone Village, which is the area behind Preston Hardware. north of Gladstone, where the transit station is, and south of Somerset. So you can see that there's a lot of stuff happening.
Are those the towers?
The towers are happening, and we're doing 3 additional towers that are part of that. But in addition to that is cultural facilities from the city of Ottawa. We're doing a new French language school on that site. It's Louise Arbor, which is moving from Beach Street to there. There's a public park, massive public park, soccer pitches and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like, it's really becoming a hub, and you're right on transit. Housing tends to be more mid-rise, high-rise but big piece of land, and no one's really thinking about it. It's right behind Preston Street.
What about New Edinburgh? Is there anything available up there?
Well, the NCC, as you probably know, you've talked to Glenn McGillis, have done a proposal for a major housing project on Sussex Drive, which is receiving a fair amount of.
Oh yeah, I saw him post about that on.
It says it was receiving a fair amount of response.
Yeah.
But lots of parts of New Edinburgh are pretty established, right? And there's not a lot of vacant land.
How would you describe New Edinburgh to somebody who's never been to Ottawa?
Well, New Edinburgh, you have to think that Ottawa is built on rivers. And so what was happening at the Rideau River meeting the Ottawa River? So originally there was a whole series of warehouses, foundries, and all kinds of stuff that existed because of the presence of water. The neighborhoods that are around it were then workers. Before you actually had a car and you didn't bring your horse to work, you walked to work. So those little streets are full of what we call Coppin or Gothic, little Victorian houses. And over time, they're quite solid. And it's, good parts are designated as a heritage village, right? And so that stuff is not really going to change. There's not large elements of change that can happen there, except if the NCC develops some of their land, and so you've got all of that. And it's, again, a wonderful location, but you can't see the remnants of the original warehouse buildings over there because they were bought by government, and they put City Hall on Green Island, and they built the embassies across the street, and they basically denuded industry, but they left the river.
Right.
So New Edinburgh is a very interesting neighborhood. It was because of the presence of the federal government buildings, the National Defense Building and Foreign Affairs, etc. Defense is probably the wrong word. National, a lot of those, it was probably one of the first areas that got gentrified. And so developers early, like Bill Town, went in and actually great neighborhoods. You're close to the Ottawa River, you're close to Rockcliffe, and you've got federal employment right there. That neighborhood was one of the first neighborhoods where we saw serious redevelopment, serious infill. And it actually informed a lot of other neighborhood studies. Very stable. Interesting because it's right adjacent to what was Vanier, and before that Eastview, which really were part of the city, which is a whole different demographic and a different kind of housing stock. Whereas New Edinburgh itself is very stable. And without knowing anything detailed about the ownership, I would say there's a lot of folks who are civil servants that live and professionals who live in that neighborhood.
It's like a storybook.
Super nice neighborhoods, good schools, close to Rockcliffe Elementary. You've got all those things. We've done several infill projects in there, like the Crichton Street School we redid with Charles Fort and built additional units in there, but not tons of examples of intensification.
Right.
Probably
could have to do with the heritage overlay, maybe.
Yeah, I think even just before the heritage overlay, we did McKay House, which is at the corner of Mackay and Dufferin, the southwest corner. Lovely little 4-story apartment building, bigger units, low density.
Right. Yeah, no, it's walking through New Edinburgh. to me is just it's beautiful. My grandmother grew up on Putman, actually, so there's a lot of history there in my family.
Right.
We love New Edinburgh. It's a great neighborhood.
But a lot of these great inner city neighborhoods, it's interesting. Greystone got its start before COVID hit, but once COVID hit, everything is shut down, and suddenly you realized a lot of people were walking these neighborhoods, right? And we had a group that you would just go to New Edinburgh. We walked New Edinburgh. We would walk Centertown. We would walk. I live just on the canal over by Bank Street. We would walk the canal system and end up coming through Greystone. There's just kind of like this walkability that seemed to be encouraged as a result of COVID.
Yeah.
You weren't driving anywhere.
Yeah.
You pick up your supplies or groceries, but aside from that, you're actually walking.
Yeah.
And I just noticed that we were involved in Lansdowne Park, and it just settled before COVID, but the walkability of the street suddenly just took off. And I'm facing the canal, and I'm on a NCC pathway, and you just see a constant flow here.
When you were designing Greystone, did you contemplate the walkability to Glebe proper, like over the Clegg Street Bridge? Was this a consideration? Because it's a big sales feature here.
I think whether you like the Flora McDonald Bridge or not, it connects east to Glebe, and it's a natural way to walk across. It's easy then to go to a football game.
Some people oppose the Clegg Street Bridge.
I don't think so. It's a rather obtrusive element when you see it on the ground, because of the way they placed it, so it obliterates the views of those 4 or 5 houses on the east side.
So they wouldn't be too pleased.
I think it's done now, but it actually was a game changer.
Yeah.
Now people on the east side of the canal have immediate access to any activity that's happening outside. And believe me, Lansdowne was become the city place to be. Like, as far as I'm concerned, that they've stolen all kinds of market share from the Byward market, and it's become a safe place where things are programmed. Lots of activities going there all the time. So if your parents are here, it's a pretty easy thing to walk over to Lansdowne to a farmer's market, to go to a football game, or.
Well, my parents, I mean, they walk everywhere from here. They'll even walk north and go hop onto the canal. They'll skate, go over to the Glebe. You got the Rideau River walking trails along here, the park here with the tennis courts. I mean, this is a walker's paradise.
It is all that, and walkers and bikers, right?
Yeah.
One of the things about that road that follows the edge of the water here, it's designed to be one way. It's as wide as a street, but it's specifically divided so that designated for bikes and walkers to be the dominant element, right?
Right.
So why make cars the central thing here?
Yeah.
Everybody has cars, but you don't need to actually design your streets so that, you can park on both sides and all that kind of stuff.
What's your favorite sort of aspect of this community? You got the forecourt towns. We're in the Spencer. You got the river terraces, the singles. When you were designing, what part of it got you excited? Wow, this is...
There's lots of moments here. And usually kind of like the one that was the obvious was the Grand Allée, which is the row of trees that led you to the Oblate Fathers building, because it's a very focused view, right?
Right.
Architecture at the end, old trees, and we want to reinforce that. And the city's made that into a linear park. So you can't drive on it, but you can hold farmers markets and stuff like that. So that's one thing. That was an obvious.
Where is that? That one's
right off of Main Street.
Okay.
So it's Main Street. You've got the milieu.
Yeah.
And then right beside it is the Grand Allée, and there's some artwork at the front.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So
it's right around this area.
That was the original Grand Allée. That's how you arrived at the Oblate Fathers. Right. You came up to the tree line thing.
And what is the Oblate Fathers?
The Oblates were a Catholic order.
Okay. And that's this limestone building.
They lived in that building. And originally they had a totally subsistence environment here. They raised cattle, they raised food, they had gardens, etc. They're totally self-sufficient. And it was it wasn't a closeted or secluded Catholic order. It was a public order. The Oblates involved in all kinds of activities in the life of the country. That's one view, but that's the obvious historical one. So we created a very similar thing we call the Petit Allée, which is the road that leads you from the two high rises, the terraces, down to the river. And so it's a very structural view that I think is something I think about a lot, because when I drive through, I come by and I come look back this way, and the two condo buildings are separated with a link in between, amenity above. Another view, that edge condition that I like the edge condition along the Rideau River, which has got a variety of single family houses, which have diverse styles. There's some modern, some more traditional. The edge condition along the park.
What is it? What does edge condition mean?
Well, the edge of our property, Clegg Street, basically is the edge of the entire development.
Okay.
And then on one side of the south side of Clegg Street is the park.
Right.
And then all of those houses which face out onto the park.
Right.
So every one of those houses was thought, well, you'll be able to park your car down below because of the change in grade. You'll be able to have a terrace that looks out over the park, and then you'll have your private space area. So those are kind of things that I think about. I mean, I quite like the buildings and scale of the buildings on Main Street because they're not overpowered. I feel like they're properly scaled. And, you know, as you wander through here, the scale of the buildings are very familiar and they're not overpowering, right? They invite you to walk through them. They're friendly. So
yeah, I noticed you have like the
right.
kind of, what would you call that? The turnaround car drop off semicircle.
Right. So I mean so even as in the forecourt that you're seeing right here, once in front of that is a semicircular city park. So each one of those units in the forecourt is actually going to look out onto a little urban space.
Yeah.
Which is, it's very different than the other spaces. The other spaces you're facing the Rideau River, you're facing the park. Those are kind of outward looking. There's no neighbors. In this case, you're actually going to be focused on a small urban semicircle.
Interesting.
So, I mean, that's a collection of spaces and ways to see this.
And I'm trying to think of other neighborhoods or developments in the city that have this feature, you know, looking onto an intimate park setting.
The best small example that we have, there's variations on it. This is more deliberate, but in old Ottawa South, the Margaret Mary School was redeveloped by Charlesford, and there was one massive oak tree which was right at the edge of the street. And what we did is we created a site plan. The project is Moorcroft, and that's kudos to Doug Casey for, you know, picking a site up. And what we did is we basically created a small urban park, very small, around this major oak tree, and we set back the buildings about it. I think Westboro Station, which is a condo building in different context, you're right on Richmond Road. We actually created an indentation where the what's the name of the clock tower is, which it's an outdoor urban space, but it's urban, but it's an urban space. And one of our earliest creations like that was Somerset Court, which is now is
that a red brick building?
40th year anniversary. And
Did you design it?
Classic. Yeah, we designed it. We created this inner court. It's right on Somerset. Yeah. Somerset's not a great street.
I was in this building a couple of weeks ago.
So that building is now 40 years old, but the idea was where you created this inner courtyard, and it's kind of in celebration of all of the old, great apartment buildings that were built, and you could see that in probably the 30s. So like the Windsor Arms and these places that were the early apartment buildings, and you can see them along Somerset Street, seeing this indent. So that was our way of celebrating. That was one of our, I think it was the second condo that we had designed. But, to me, there's the building, there's the public space that you use to create something that makes the building and the space go together. The best example of all those, perhaps, is the Hudson Park with Charlesford at the corner of Kent Street and Nepean, where we actually took the corner away to make a public park as you entered. So it's kitty corner from St. Pat's Cathedral.
Yeah.
We came across the street, we cut it back, we created an urban space in front of it. And both
That's
the front
public?
Yeah, both the front doors face out onto that space. So, I kind of think architecture is not always just about a building. It's about a building and the space in which it's set, and then how does the two together actually make the city a more interesting city, right? If you can do all those things, you're accomplishing way more than just one. So they become really, really strong together. And it's interesting when we can work with progressive developers who actually see the value of that as opposed to just swallowing it up. And certainly Charlesford was really good. I mentioned two projects that did exactly that. And they've formed such a strong framework that was obvious, both from a usability perspective, but also from a marketing perspective. You could do something very interesting.
If you were to only design one more piece of architecture, and it had to be a single family home, a community, or a building, like a condo tower, what would you pick?
Single family home, a community, or a building? Community.
Why is that?
Probably the most interesting, but because it assembles all those things together. Like, we did a very interesting project for a not-for-profit project for multi-faith housing in Barrhaven. We got to design a range of units, townhouses, back-to-down houses, and low-rise apartment buildings. And it was a competitive bid with the city of Ottawa to get the land. And multi-faith housing were basically the operator or the client in the case. And so he created an environment that had very few cars on it, encouraged interaction because of the public spaces between the buildings, but also created a variety of scales within this little development. And it's all done within the affordable range and a great little project. Great project.
Interesting.
So those kinds of things. Yeah. Do I think all the individual buildings are good? Yes, I do. I actually think that. But what makes them really good is how they are knit together into an environment. So, and then in the end, what does that environment say to the neighborhood that it's existing in? So trying to do all of those things together.
Right.
Buildings, communal space.
Interesting.
How do you address the street? How do you address what's beyond it?
Now, since Umber Talks podcast is a subsidiary of a real estate brokerage, Umber Realty, what would be your advice to, because as realtors, our job is to describe this to people, the different neighborhoods, the different product type, the different architecture, what's going on and what's going up, any view obstructions. This is our job. What would your advice, say your kid was becoming a broker, say, get really good at blank, or this is where realtors are really missing the boat, or if you're going to be strong broker, really focus on providing the client with X, Y, and Z?
Good question. Know your demographic. A young professional, a mid-family, mid-career family, mature family, and a senior might all be looking for slightly different things. And then know the value point in each one of those situations so that whoever's going to buy through you does better than just buy something that you're selling them, but they buy into something that connects with what they really need. So my daughter lives on Belmont in Old Ottawa South. It's a local street, great animation, close to schools, close to a park, etc. If I said to him, I got a great deal and I could move you to another neighborhood, the answer would be no. And even though we designed the house and it's a great house, etc., and I could design you a better house, the answer would be no, because the neighborhood is so strong and it meets her needs so substantially that she's not gonna do that. A younger professional might, if you looked across the same, might say, you know, I don't want to be downtown. I want a place that's vibrant. And so I might like a project in Hittenberg. I might like the Tiger project where at Rosemont, because it has that kind of vibrancy to it. And I'm not ready to settle down with a family yet. So, but I like convenience. I certainly like animation. I don't need tons of space, but you can follow it through. Like every demographics. So you're selling to their demographic. I mean, it's the obvious thing. I'm not trying to sell. I don't want to sell you a boomer into a thriving little neighborhood of young professionals. It all depends on the individual. You love diversity. You want to have a variety of things. For me, personally, an older guy, I like diversity. I like the fact that there's a variety. I don't want to be in a monoculture. I don't want to be in a building that looks like me. I want to be in a building where I have a variety of people. I've attended church where we have a diversity of age groups, racial backgrounds, attitudes. I thrive on that stuff because I get to live into community, right? So how's that really great to selling? Don't sell the wrong product. And within that context, I think there's always a new project coming that may respond to one of your other groups, and to know how that responds to the people who are looking, because you probably got 10 or 15 people who always, hey, you know, Shaun, I'm still looking. You haven't given me anything. You know, we tried 3 times to buy that. It didn't work. Just knowing what's coming out of there, I think is really important. And then, you know, real estate's a long road. You know, my brother's a Coldwell banker agent, you know, over time.
In Ottawa?
No, he's in Rye, New Hampshire, but there's the first sale, there's the follow-up sale. Then you become the family doctor of real estate.
Yeah.
So you're advising them, you're advising their cohorts, and, you know, like as a result, you develop relationships.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No.
Relationships, and the relationships are not a transactional. I got this. The relationships, you know, exist over time. And I would say that to anybody who's in the service industry. If you look at the one opportunity to make some money, that's short-sighted.
Yeah.
Think about the long opportunity to form relationships, because you're not just selling to me. You'll be selling to my daughter. You'll be selling to someone I'm going to recommend.
Yeah.
It's probably an obtuse and another political.
No.
Responding.
No, I'm glad you said that. It's something we strive to do, which is, you see some folks out there, realtors, they'll get a referral or pick up a client and then they just jump out on showings. Whereas we look at that as the complete wrong way to do it. We have almost like a mandatory sit down where we just ask questions. I get to know the person, you know, like you, I would have never have known you want to be around diversity. You want to be engaged with people that are different to you, all this different stuff. We go through like a huge list of questions, just get to know the person first, and then start talking about the product.
And I think the other thing is that find a way of delivering the message that people don't want to hear. Your house is listed, it's 50,000 over what it should be. I'm just going to tell you now, you can list it whatever you want.
Yeah.
but I'm going to tell you. And they said, well, thanks, Shaun, but I'm moving on to Larry Mullen Curley Real Estate because they're actually going to sell my house for 50 more. And then, it sits there
It
listening
sits there. Days on market
for
keep ticking.
for 6 months.
Yeah.
And now it's not just that it's 50 below, it's 25 below the 50 because you created an expectation and it gets stale, right?
This concept is in our listing presentation. Is that the price reduce, because they were overpromised this big price. It kills you in the end with your days on market. Really hurt.
Also undermines your relationship. So if you got a disconnect on price for acquisition, or I think I'm going to buy it for this, or we deal with it all the time. I would like to build a new custom house. Okay. How big? Yeah. Okay. What kind of left budget do you think you have? It's like where I interview and, well, I'm thinking it's going to be like $300 a foot. And they go, no, it's not going to be $300 a foot. Probably more like $5. And, oh, geez, I don't know. I mean, you have those conversations. Like I've had clients come back they passed them the first time and then come back and say, I phoned you 10 years ago. You told me it was going to be this. It was that and more, but I didn't believe you. And I went somewhere else. But like I think honesty and integrity are all part of the service industry, right? It's, again, if you're looking for that one opportunity, and your life depends on that one transaction, that's different than thinking you're going to have a life of transactions.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard for realtors, I suppose, to just give the truth and
Very hard.
let people know where they stand.
Very hard.
Because it's not what they want to hear sometimes, but you have to deliver that.
Well, and in your industry, there are those that will focus on the highest price and find the comparables that substantiates where I think it should be, as opposed to like step back, really understand the story behind every one of those projects.
And do you find you run into that in the development industry where a developer would come to you and say, can we achieve this per square foot? And you have to tell them, look, that's just not where the market's at right now.
Yeah, I have this perverse knowledge of real estate, which most architects don't have and not interested in. But I'm perversely interested in what the value of land is, what things would sell. And there's a story behind every project. Someone might refer a project. A good example would be at Lansdowne, there are 2 high-rise buildings. So we designed the Rideau at the bridge and the other one at
the Vibe
at Homeland. And why is there height there? Well, the urban design review panel from Lansdowne said, we want 2 high buildings as part of the fundamental principles of Lansdowne. And then someone comes along and says, we're 4 blocks down the way. We think we can get 12 stories. Yeah. You can't get 12 stories.
Yeah.
You'd be lucky. You'd be lucky to get a mid-rise building, which is up to 9, but more likely it's going to be 6. I'm always surprised. So those kinds of conversations happen. They're a little bit more nuanced than the high-rise conversation. Right now, you have a transit station, anybody can do a high-rise.
But back to the original point, I mean, you think like a developer to advise a developer in that. And I experienced that. The first thing when you came into the sales office and first thing you said to me was, hey, Shaun, how's it going? You got any listings in here? What's the price? What's the square footage?
Yeah.
And we do, and we have a beautiful listing in here, 1,600 square feet, but you're doing the math and saying, okay, well, are they going to achieve that price? And then this one, our forecourt listing, what's the price on it? What's the model? Pulled up the model, and it's just engaging with pricing and keeping a pulse on that.
That's all risk management, because I'm in the business of creating ideas, and then I'm in the service business, right? So I don't get to design the beautiful thing unless it's the right size and it's going to be an offering that makes sense. Because if it's the wrong thing, it'll never it'll never happen.
Right.
It's like if it's, I mean, you're surprised the odd time you'll be surprised by something. But in general, there's a kind of a volume of information that says, if I got a 1,600 square foot townhouse over there, like right now, those townhouses are about 1,600 square feet. They're better value than buying this here. They're built.
Mm.
They have better quality materials. The new ones cost more, right?
Mm.
The existing ones, if you look at them on a price point, are probably more like $700 a square foot, and this stuff over here is eight plus square foot.
So will you ever tell a developer the metrics don't make sense? I advise you don't do this.
I, for the developers who care, we're in a unique position where people actually ask our opinion, as opposed to saying, "Can you draw us up some plans?" They usually ask us our opinion about value, because we're often looking at land that hasn't come to market, and we wish to see what the yield is and what can I market on that site.
Mm.
What's going to make sense, and that creates the environment for actually doing a design and doing a project. But if you don't have those kind of discussions, then your client's making all those decisions that are telling you what the answer is. That's fine too. That's fine. I mean, if you have a clear idea, we're able to execute. But a lot of our clients actually want you engaged, trying to understand what you know about the real estate market, what's going to work.
Mm.
I mean, yeah. So as a result, we get to create interesting things because they're logical and they're saleable, right? People don't talk about architecture that way, but there's a framework, right?
Yeah.
In a civil servant town, there'll be a price point for just about everything. So in order to break out of that price point, you actually have to be appealing to a different clientele.
Right.
Right.
Right. That makes sense.
So she asked me before, when do you think the condo market's coming back? Well, I don't know that, but you have to know your demographic and what they want to achieve price wise and sort of by living environment. So you can come to that idea.
Do you think that, we'll use an example of someone in Westboro selling their home for 3.2 million, 2.8 million,
Yeah.
all cash, no mortgage on it. Do you think those folks are going to be more inclined to invest that money, add it to their portfolio, get their dividend, and go and rent? Or do you think there will be this desire for ownership as this demographic shift takes place?
For an older demographic, they have lots of options. And Ottawa is an environment, a high quality environment for nature. Many people in that category of maybe having a $3 million house probably have a cottage. So it's a bit of a transition to go from a house to an apartment. So on the math side, it's very clear. If you have a house that's 3.2, your annual operating costs are probably $25,000 to $30,000. If you divide that amongst 1,500 square of apartment, that's $2 a square foot. If it's not quite that, but you'll get the idea. Basically, your expenses form a substantial part of whatever you're going to rent. So if you could rent something at $4 a square foot, which is a lot of money, by the way, so it's $6,000 a month. But the reality is that if you're selling something at 3.2, probably 60% of that could go into an investment portfolio and grow. And the other is just going to pay your rent.
Pay the difference.
You pay the difference. So there's lots of financial incentives to do it. What's missing? What's missing in that equation is rental product that actually responds to the quality of the house you just left. So nothing against this room here, but if I'm moving in from a $3.2 million house, I've got artwork. There's no walls left over. I've got furniture. I got a buffet that my grandmother had that I've been carrying around because it's great. It doesn't fit. So, there's space The unit needs to be larger. They don't need to have multiple bedrooms. Like you probably get by with a couple bedrooms, but space, and then there's finishes. So who's going to respond? Who's responding to that need? And right now, most of the rental product is more general. We're going to have some small units, some bachelors, some one bedrooms, and they're very size sensitive. Let me put it that way. Because on a spreadsheet, it looks like if I've got a bachelor at 400 square feet, I can get maybe $5 a square foot. A lot of turnover, but maybe I can get that. So it's a spreadsheet analysis. However, when you get to someone who owns a house that's $3 million, 3.2, you need something a little bit better. And there's money there to do it.
But would someone pay $5 or $6 a foot for that increased cost?
Apparently there's a project in Toronto I was looking at, it was $10 a square foot.
Really?
But aside from that, Ottawa is a civil servant town. That class, when you think about, if you have a house that's worth $3 million and you're an entrepreneur and you're used to spending money and you have cash, etc., you might want to continue with a condo. If your house is $3 million and you're a civil servant with a guaranteed pension, but not necessarily tons of cash, rental might be just a perfect option for you.
Right.
Perfect. Like I don't, because I don't want to reinvest in another condo because I don't have it. I don't want to commit that level of cash. So I think there's something really interesting that's going to happen in the rental market. Really interesting. Because we're now at the stage where we've got a bunch of high-rise buildings built in various places around town, which are probably slowing in their rental. You might see their longer rental period. There's lots of people who say, I'm going to do a 40-story building. That's a long lease-up period, right?
With a lot of competition.
With a lot of competition and increasing level of competition. So it's that step back from that. What's happening like quality buildings in great neighborhoods. And we're working on our example, a project we just finished with Uniform on the canal, the Echo, speaks to that demographic. It's a building that looks like a condominium. It's finished like a condo. The finishes are great.
Larger units too?
Larger units, and
what are they getting a foot about?
I can't speak to it exactly, but they would be at the upper range.
Cracking the five.
And you start to think about the quality neighborhoods around town where people would like to transition. Rockcliffe, New Edinburgh, maybe Rothwell. Rothwell's a bit far out. Highland Park, Westboro, Wellington Village, Alta Vista. There's lots of room and environments for a need for high-end apartment building responding to accumulated wealth.
So if someone were to go out and do a well-appointed larger suites to service this demographic, and would your knee-jerk response be build rentals or build condominiums right now in today's market?
My knee-jerk, that's a good question. If you're looking at a project of more than 30 or 40 units, I think you're probably looking at a rental project.
A lower rise, 4-story, around 25 units, 2,000 square feet.
I think you could flip either way.
Yeah.
I think, and then the next part is got to be a great site.
Yeah.
Can't be an anywhere site. So it's got to be a great site. So you maybe find it along the canal. You might find it in the midst of a well-established neighborhood.
Westboro, probably, right?
Westboro. I think the area that's probably lacking something right now is Alta Vista, because it's such a monoculture of just singles, right? Mm-hmm. It really is nothing that allows you to kind of, transition. Don't think boomers, but also think splits, separations where the family household goes to the wife and the kids and someone's living separately from that.
You might be getting a call from a developer that hears this and wants to do this project. There's definitely a market out there.
Anyways, we're crystal balling, but I do think the next twist is going to be those kind of projects were not the obvious high rise and looking at upscale within again, it's Ottawa. It's not going to be crazy, crazy expensive, but it's going to be something different. Right.
Right. What do you hope to see as we close off here? What do you hope to see in Ottawa as it grows?
Well, what I hope for mostly is better design. I'm like, I think we're pretty good at design. I just hope they're, I mean, and when you get better competition, you get better at what you do.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I would, I would like to get rid of the restricted vision, the copycat kind of I'm doing, like we develop color palettes around and then they're copied everywhere, like, but they're copied poorly,
Yeah.
the wrong proportions and all this kind of stuff. And you it's frustrating to see someone, I mean, there's a 2 or 3 really good designers around who I think are worthy of, and they do good work. And I drive by and I go, that's nice. I like that. I'd be proud to say that was my project.
Right.
But there are fewer and fewer of those projects. So it's it's 2 things. It's one is the buildings, and then I think the other part is how the buildings address the street and the public space that actually makes them more powerful.
Right.
So it's a combination of building and landscape, the two things together that I think make something more, a stronger offering.
Right.
Like I have buildings. I mean, one of my favorite buildings that we have done is aside from a series of houses, one building is the Rideau at the bridge.
Yeah.
Why do I like it? I like it because when I walk across the bridge, there's a certain plane there. When I drive around the canal, I get to see it in terms of setting sun and reflection. I see it at night. I see how people walk down towards the canal. There's a lot of things that I just happen to like about it.
It's a beautiful build.
But, it's a combination of all those things. It's a building. There's a context. It's trying to kind of be part of the street. And it's also being part of the canal.
Right. We're going to close off with some rapid fires.
Oh my goodness. Here comes the question.
We did this last time and it was my favorite part of the session. So remember, you can always feel free to pass. So since we're in Greystone Village, I'll fire off two Greystone Village questions. We'll start off there and we'll just keep up rolling. Best feature of Greystone Village?
Diversity.
One key feature that makes it different from other Ottawa developments?
Same thing. What makes it different? There's a consistent design execution. Consistency, whether it's low or high.
Most underrated feature in a condo?
Most underrated feature,
something people should think about more when they're buying in a condo.
Oh, that's really a tough one. That's really tough. I'm going to go with views.
Views.
Yeah.
Can't change them.
It's the one thing that can make a condo different. You can always replicate the space, large or small. But what do I get to look at?
Love it. You personally, would you prefer to live in an N-unit town or a single level condo, same square footage? And you can pick the square footage.
Well, it would have to be a really special condo. I would probably put the end unit town.
Okay. What creates long-term value in a building? The building itself.
Long-term value, I think, is how contextualized your design is. So that's what aspect, what views, how it's positioned.
in one sentence, what makes a home truly great?
Truly
Great.
great.
Wow.
I would say the space is the part you can't change. So the spatial attributes are fixed. I can redecorate, I can remodel, I can change the attitude of things, but I can't really change the quality of the space. So that includes flow and a little bit of layout in there. Yeah, I think
I like that.
I mean, all of our buildings think about what are you looking at when you're looking out. It's a very Wrightian thing. Frank Lloyd Wright, the notion of prospect, to be able to see in long views. I always appreciate long views, like I do if it's a small space or a big space. But the thing that's probably more constant is how this space here is a higher than normal space because it's on the ground floor. So it looks to me like it's probably 9.5 feet tall, right? So
Can't change it.
you can't change it.
Can't change it.
Yeah.
Last question, actually. Did you wear the Umber hat?
Sure.
You threw it on?
I don't. It's in my car.
Beautiful. Because the theme last week, I gave you a black hat. I had a black shirt.
Right now, you're going to be a white hat.
I'm giving you a white hat.
Okay, perfect.
So here it is. My favorite hat in the world. I'm curious if you threw it on.
Who makes your hats?
I don't know. My wife sourced them, but there's a small here or a medium. So I don't know.
Medium.
All right. So the story on that hat is, I've got an oddly shaped head, I guess. So I have a really hard time finding a hat.
Yeah.
I found a hat I loved and I said, this is the Umber hat. And, people love them. I don't know. It's a great hat. So there's a white one for you now.
I'd be curious. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
All
Thank you so much for coming on again. It's the Barry Hobin 2.0 episode. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come out and chat with us here at Greystone.
These are all themes that are in the air today. Like these are important themes in terms of the world of design and furniture, and a lot to do with about real estate, design and real estate, and actually about the city.
Yeah,
Aspirationally, a great city. We wish for so much more because we'd like to be. You see more, and a lot of it is trying to find individuals who want to make a difference, as opposed to just
throw something up.
Find a convenient way to get from A to B, right?
Yeah.
So there's I'm very, very fortunate to have some great clients who want to make Ottawa a better place, and they care. And so they're not spreadsheet junkies. They obviously, spreadsheets are important. They're in the background.
Mm-hmm.
What's important is what you're actually doing in the foreground. The spreadsheet's just your marking system to see that I do okay as I'm doing something interesting, right?
Yeah. So
that's really a story of design as well. Like in the end, like I could lose money on a job, but if you do a lousy job, but just tell me worse. Right?
Yeah. We'll end on that.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for tuning into Umber Talks. Don't forget to follow the show and share with a friend you think would love this episode. See you next time. Bye.